Okay, hello, my gorgeous tech friends. Today we talk about mark makers. Now, this is actually market makers, but I do refer to them as mark makers. This is really significant within exchange traded funds. Now, we haven't even spoken about exchange traded funds yet, but we will do. We will also speak about mutual traded funds, and we'll really dive into those kind of conversations, a traditional mutual fund versus an exchange traded fund. But let's look at a market maker first of all. These are really important conversations we're going to be having over here on HERTECH, because the world is changing. We've already got pieces out on SEC. We've also got pieces out on the iOS COS, because there is so much going on in the community at this time, and it's really important for all of us to understand the different aspects and roles everyone's taking on at this time, because in relation to IEOs, IPOs, STOs and ICOs, the world is changing. The way in which crypto is going to be regulated as well, globally, internationally, it is going to be a big game changer, and it is best that we all have our toes dipped into the different arenas, the different acronyms, let's say, and the different roles that everyone plays in the market. Is so important for us to have our heads on a swivel and be aware of all of it. Okay, so stay with me as we really dive into market makers. Okay, so what is the role of the market maker for exchange traded funds? When an investor buys or sells ETF units on a stock exchange, they are often transacting with a market maker. But what is a market maker? What exactly do they do? And what are they responsible for, right? Key questions today. A market maker, sometimes called a designated broker, is a broker, dealer, or investment firm that plays an essential role in how an exchange-traded fund trades and ensures the continued and efficient exchange of securities between buyers and sellers is delivered, right? The whole deliverable is what we're going to talk about today, of units, blocks of units, and how that is then delivered to the stock exchange. That is the key role of the market maker, right? They do this in multiple ways, including providing liquidity to the market by selling units to investors and purchasing units when investors sell. Yeah? We could talk a lot more as well about other aspects of this, but I'm going to try and keep it as clean as possible today and focus on the market makers. But we do have a lot of other terms that I would love to dive in with you. So if you are interested in hearing loads of different scopes on this conversation for your own personal interests, like I really do want to speak a lot more about the authorized participants in the situation, unit creation holders, and just in-kind exchanges, the difference between a mutual fund and the ETF itself, okay? But let's keep going, right? Market makers create ETF units by delivering a basket of underlying securities to the ETF provider in exchange for a block of units, typically 50,000 units of the ETF with the same market value. These newly created ETF units represent an inventory that can be sold on the stock exchange to investors. When the market maker runs out of units because the investing public has purchased them all, they simply repeat the process, beginning with purchasing and delivering additional securities, right? This creation process can be reversed into a redemption process whereby the market maker exchanges ETF units with the ETF provider from an equivalent basket of underlying securities from the ETF. This sometimes occurs if many investors in an ETF choose to sell their investments at the same time. Creations and redemptions allow the ETF to be in equilibrium, which means the number of units demanded by the marketplace approximates the number of units supplied, which ensures that an ETF's market price and net asset value, NAV, are closely linked here, right? Now, if we're looking at a model of all of this here, and I'll pop this on the screen for you to have a good look at, we're looking at investors, right? First of all, and the investors are taking their cash to the market maker. The market maker is also, we've just understood the difference between the equilibrium of that creation and that redemption, yeah? Which is the beautiful thing that we all benefit from with the exchange traded fund, yeah? It is that creation and redemption, the moving back and forth, especially in relation to those authorized participants as well. But I'll do a separate piece on that, not to lose you too early on. But straight away, we've got the investors going straight with their cash to the market maker. Now, the market maker is taking that cash, and created securities. Those securities then go straight into the ETF. Now, that ETF has produced units. Now, those units are obviously going to either be bought, sold. It's accounting for units of stock on the exchange, but then it is also returning back to the market maker, who is then taking those ETF units and returning it to the investor in either I want to say redeemable way, but either through recreation of more units, or redemption of units sold. Yeah? Now, buying and selling units to the investor as well. Market makers are tasked with providing ETF liquidity to a given market. They do so by providing units for sale on the stock exchange at asking prices. And then posting bid prices, they will purchase units at for investors wishing to sell. The bids and asks are themselves calculated based upon underlying asset values and the cost and fees associated with buying or selling all of the underlying securities inside the ETF. Now, I've read that statement and I'm sorry, it's just not the cleanest for me, but I hope you found resonance in that. What I will say from this model that is now present on the screen, so just bear with me as I run through all of this just for clarity for you guys, okay? Please hit the like, please value a sister for really trying to break this shit down for the betterment of humanity here, because we are all learning this stuff and it's not enough in the public domain, to be fair, the way in which we're studying this, and young adults also need to know all of this stuff for the future. It's really, really important to be educated on these topics. So work with me here as we try and pave a way for a whole new into industry approach. But stay with me, okay? Now, the authorized participants can also be called creation unit holders, right? They deliver the securities to the ETF sponsor, who then returns to the authorized participant a creation unit of ETF shares, which usually consist of 50,000 shares or a multiple thereof, right? We've identified that standardized, typical 50,000 units of shares, right? The authorized participant can either keep the shares or sell them in the retail market. The authorized participants can also redeem the ETF shares by delivering them in creation units to the ETF sponsor in return of the securities represented by those shares, yeah? To reduce taxes for the funds, the ETF sponsor returns securities with the lowest tax basis to the authorized participant. So that when the ETF sponsor does have to sell some securities in the future, the securities remaining with the ETF sponsor will have a higher tax basis that will generate smaller capital gains for the fund. Note that the exchange of ETF shares and securities they represent between the authorized participant and the ETF sponsor is an in-kind exchange. There is no exchange of cash. This also lowers taxes for the ETF sponsor, thereby lowering the fund's fees, right? So retail investors have no relationship with the ETF sponsor. Only the AP officers, which is the authorized participants, right, offers ETF shares for sale on the stock exchange. A holder of ETF shares does not own a portion of the securities held by the ETF sponsor, but owns a portion of the creation unit held by the authorized participant, right? Different strokes for different folks here, guys. And I do really wonder who this content's for. and how much I need to break it down. I know this content is for me and my corporation, and HERTECH are doing what we can, but I haven't got a consumer base yet to truly understand, guys, if you are indeed benefiting from these fucking conversations. So if you are finding benefit in these transmissions today, feel free to let me know. Feel free to throw your corporation in the comments if you're brave enough. Let me know what you're up to, what you're working on, and why on earth it's beneficial for you to understand the ins and outs of an authorized participant and or ETF and or mark makers in the community at this time. Okay, love and light, collective.